Hey guys, my guest tonight, Stan Gordon, is going to be talking about strange cryptids. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Well, good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. How's everybody doing? I hear you. One step closer to Friday, right? Let me get this thing going. Push the button. Okay. Right button? Yeah, that's the right button. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you think you have a paranormal problem, we can help you. It might take us a while to get to you, but we can definitely help you. And in the case that it does take a while for us to get to you, we do have psychics and mediums on staff who could phone you and talk about what may or may not be going on at your home or business. And in most cases, they can calm the energy or whatever's going on down until we can get there. But like I said, it doesn't take us more than 2 or 3 days to get out there. Okay, that being said, if you need to find us, we are all over the web. You can check us out at Facebook, YouTube, all the usual places. And also the radio show, this show right here, okay? Google California Haunts Radio. Google California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, and you'll find us, okay? All right, one quick announcement is Sunday, I will be teaching a psychic development class, Psychic Development 1, if you guys are interested in that. I will have the information up around 10 p.m. tonight over on the California Haunts Meetup site. Also on Saturday, I am teaching a Ghost Hunting 101 class, and that's 3 p.m. Pacific. So if you're interested in that, please join us. Again, the California Haunts Meetup site, California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team Meetup site. You'll see it under events. But as far as the Psychic Development class goes, check out after 10 p.m. today, Pacific today, and it'll be posted. Okay, if you're watching from Facebook, and a lot of you are, and you haven't done so already, and you tend to like what you see tonight or here, please feel free to follow. We're always looking for followers, and real excited because that just keeps building up. I mean, that's the thing, more people follow, more people share, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with YouTube. If you haven't subscribed already and you like what you've been seeing on the show, please feel free to subscribe. We're trying to hit that 1,000 mark. We are going to be starting a special shows over there. Nance, Matt, and I are going to be doing a show, a different type of show, and I'm going to be out there talking with you guys and stuff. I do qualify for Super Chat. Don't know. I just sent my application into YouTube, so we'll see if all that gets okayed. And if that does, we're going to be doing some extra stuff over on YouTube for you guys, after these shows. Okay, so we're going to play it by ear on that. Okay. Anyway, if you're watching from YouTube, please subscribe. Be sure to share the video with people in your house or friends that you know that would be interested in this stuff. I don't do paranormal all the time. I'm a photojournalist, and I like to kind of mix it up. So, you're going to find all kinds of topics. There's more than 950 videos over there, all this show. In fact, announcement tonight, too, is this is show number 200 for this season. Season 4, show 200. Usually we do a big thing. Nancy and I will have a little discussion about that tomorrow. Okay. All right. The only thing that I ask is if you do like the show, and this goes for YouTube, and this goes for all the stuff, whether it's TikTok, or wherever we happen to be broadcasting on right now, be sure to give us some thumbs up, happy faces, hearts, and be sure to chat in the chat room amongst yourselves. I'll be sure to try to answer questions as best I can as well, because what that does is that raises us up in what they call the FYP, and the FYP is inside the master computers at all these social media places. And the computer reads that and sees us as getting a lot of people liking us and all that. So it pushes us out to more people. It's kind of like you guys sharing, plus the computer will share and spread this out to more people. So that's all I ask, if you like what you see. Okay, since I'm done with that, my guest tonight is going to be on the phone. I'm going to be calling him Stan Gordon. He's been on here before. He loves to talk about his cryptids. He's very, very well versed in cryptids, especially cryptids in Pennsylvania, where I believe he lives. So that's going to be happening in a few minutes. Now, just quick warning: I decided, in fact, I'm going to be doing a video for you guys, for you people that might be interested in starting your own podcast or maybe even shooting photos or video or whatever. I've built 2 studios in my house, and very simple, very inexpensive, and I'm going to show you how I did it. Like this particular studio in here, I have it built already, but I can show you the materials I used, and I'll tell you how I did it. Right now, we're testing out something tonight as far as the phone calls go, because I don't have all that fancy phone stuff. So usually I set the phone down on a table, and then I put the mic on top of it with the speakerphone on. Well, what I did was I designed a soundproof box for the phone. I don't know how it's going to work, how it's going to sound, but we're going to give it a try. Okay, let me get Stan on the phone, and then give me a couple seconds to set this stuff up, to get this going over there, because it's right off my side over here is where this thing is, and so we can try and get the balance going with the mics and everything. And let's talk cryptids. Okay, here we go. Let me go close down. I need dialing music, right? All right, Skype. I need my speakerphone on too to do this. Okay, there it goes. Okay, go. There we go.
Hello.
Hi, Stan.
Hi, Charlotte. How are you?
Good. How are you? Let me get set up here. Give me a second. Starting to move stuff over. Give me a minute here. Should only take a couple minutes here to get you set up. Are you still there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Hang on a second. All right, let's get this fit in there. This is so awkward. Okay. Hang on 1 second. We're setting you up for the soundproof booth here. Okay, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Let me get this going. Get the sound adjusted. And okay. Oh, I'll have to do that way. Okay. So how you doing today, Stan?
Oh, we're doing fine. We're always busy around here, and everything's always busy. Always reports coming in. Never stops in this area.
Absolutely. It is a very busy area. So for the people that don't know who you are or what you do, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yes, I've been involved in investigating UFO sightings, Bigfoot, cryptid reports for going on 65 years, believe it or not. In all these years, I have never seen a Bigfoot or UFO myself. I've interviewed thousands of witnesses to UFOs, hundreds of Bigfoot and cryptid witnesses. The sightings go on every year in Pennsylvania, but I started this in 1959 as a young kid who was interested in science, and happened to hear a radio show talking about unusual happenings, and went to the local library to read all the books they had on these subjects. And I was 16 years old when the incident happened near Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, back in 1965, and I've been out in the field ever since. And just to make the story short, in 1969, I set up a hotline for the public to report UFO sightings. And as word got out about my hotline, the phones of my own was ringing off the hook day and night, and realized quickly I couldn't do this all on my own. So in 1970, I founded the first of 3 volunteer research groups that would investigate these incidents for many years across Pennsylvania. And the first group was set up in 1970, and it was kind of amazing who I got involved. We had scientists, engineers, technicians, former military specialists, police officers, and we all did this around our full-time jobs. And that's what it was. I've been doing it ever since. As an independent researcher now, I'm involved, but I'm still in touch with many other people in the science community, many other researchers in the field. I don't have my own groups anymore, but I'm still very active. I get reports in here on a regular basis, and even in recent weeks there's been some very interesting activity.
Awesome. Before we get into that very interesting activity, can you fill everybody in on what happened in Kecksburg?
You know what, you faded out on me. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, can you fill everybody in about what happened in Kecksburg?
Oh, boy, we could talk for days about Kecksburg. Just very, very briefly.
Sure.
It was a Thursday night. I was 16 years old when the incident happened. It was December 9th, 1965. I was tuned to one of the radio station in Pittsburgh where they had a very popular talk radio show, and almost the entire program was focusing on the breaking news that this brilliant fiery object was seen from Ontario, Canada, over Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. It was about 4:47 p.m. in the Pittsburgh area. It's just getting dark around here when the the police departments, the radio, TV stations, and newspapers were jammed with calls from people who saw this fiery object moving across the greater Pittsburgh area. And as the evening went on, more reports are coming in on the radio station. They're interviewing witnesses, they're reading the press news wires that are coming across, and reports were coming in that the object, whatever it was seen over Pittsburgh, apparently fell to the little village of Kecksburg, Westmoreland County. That's about 12 miles from where I live in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. And it got even more exciting when reports came in that the military was now arriving in the Kecksburg area to search for an unidentified flying object. And it was an amazing story. There was very little names in the paper at the time. I began to document everything that was breaking on the news that day. And over the years, I tracked down hundreds of people who were involved. These were people who came out to that area after hearing the news broadcast, many reporters, police officers, volunteer firemen, later military sources, and found out that there was a lot more to the story. The next day, it's in the paper that there was a thorough search of the woods where it fell, and authorities found absolutely nothing, and officially it was already stated that it was a bright meteor in the sky, nothing had fallen, it was just imagination of some of the locals. But we found out that there was a lot more to the story, and one thing I found out after many, many years of independently finding various witnesses who could verify certain details, what we learned is this object came in from the Pittsburgh area, moved out over the city of Greensburg, moved out towards Route 30 East, made a turn to the south. It was seen along all these rural communities out to the mountains of Laurelville. The object reportedly kind of hesitated over the mountain, began to track back to the outskirts of Kecksburg, made another turn down into the woods very slowly. People said it looked like it was almost like controlled, and went down to those woods. Well, what we didn't know at the time was, and again, it took me years to find some of these people, and some of these people, well, many of these people are now deceased, unfortunately, but found some of the locals who, right after they saw the object come overhead and go down into the woods, some of the locals ran down into the woods to see what had fallen, thinking it may have been an airplane crash. That's when they came across this large metallic acorn-shaped object, kind of an off-gold bronze color, big enough for a person to stand aside of, semi-buried in the ground. But what's interesting is it's shaped like a big acorn, but there's no weld marks, no seams, no fuselage, no windows, no parachutes, and it has these unusual markings, look at some type of odd symbols on the back raised up section of the acorn. And what I later found out from independent sources was, again, many people that night reported witnessed military equipment, military personnel, and armed soldiers in the area. They had the area cordoned off so people couldn't get down. What they didn't know was some people already got into the woods before they arrived. But anyhow, what I found out was that the object was removed from the area during the early morning hours next morning, December 10th. It was taken out on a military flatbed tractor trailer with a tarp over it. It went to Lockbourne Air Force Base near Columbus, Ohio, during early morning hours. It was backed into a hangar. They set up a security perimeter around it, and I was told they were given a shoot-to-kill order to anybody who approached the hangar without the proper clearance. I was also told that that object and that truck stayed there for a short time, then it continued on to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And where it is today, we just don't know. We've heard stories it's still there. We've heard rumors it's been moved, but we have no way to know. That's the short part of the story, and whatever it was has been speculation for years and years, but it still remains a mystery, and regardless, it's a very interesting case.
It is an interesting case. And there had to be something for the military to get involved like that right away.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, for the quick response, for them to get there as quickly as they did, and with the number of vehicles there and the personnel, I've said for years, I think they had a quick response plan already in place for years to respond to these type of incidents, and I think in this case it was utilized.
Absolutely. Do you think that, like you say, it's kind of like a mystery what happened to whatever they took out of there. Do you think it might still be at Wright-Patterson? Excuse me.
Well, we don't know. I mean, we have no way to really know that. We've heard rumors for years that it's still there on a building, and it was not the hangar 18 people talk about a lot. It was a different building, but we have no way to know if it's been moved or not. We just don't know at this point.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. As far as not knowing, disclosure. Do you think that we're ever going to find out about these things?
Okay, your audio is a little distorted. So hard for me to hear.
Okay.
Did you say? Do you think we'll ever know what these UFOs are? Is that what you're asking?
Do you think the government's ever going to tell us what's going on for real?
Well, the government now, the Pentagon has a new program called ARROW, All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. They have a big website the public can look at now. They're starting to add more data to it. But basically what you're seeing is a lot of information, a lot of old information that's been declassified. But, apparently there's been quite a lot of interest in Congress in the last couple of years, and there's some within Congress that want the Pentagon and the military to open up more records to have more information make available to the public, and there's others apparently within that still want to keep a lot of this classified. So personally, my opinion has been for years and years, the government has been aware of these things for a long, long time. It's an international phenomenon. It's been going on for years and years. I don't think the government itself has the answers to what's going on. They're still trying to figure it out. I think that's why there's so much secrecy. So I really don't think anytime soon that we're going to hear any major release of information. The door will open. You'll probably get some more cases that are being declassified, but I think a lot of the really important cases, I think it's been quite a long time to where we really see those kind of reports ever opened. Absolutely.
I agree. Now, you spoke earlier about stuff that's been going on recently. Can you tell me about that?
Well, it's busy here in Pennsylvania every year. My hotline never stops ringing or email reports coming in. I receive reports of not only UFOs, but cryptid reports, Bigfoot reports every year from across the state. The southwest portion of the state where I'm at is very busy all the time, and we have a lot of good input for information in this part of the state as well. And first of all, let me say this. From the time I was out in the field in 1965, and it's still the same today, while many of the reports come in sound initially interesting or unusual, when you take the time to properly investigate them, many are determined to be either misidentifications of natural or man-made objects. So over the last few years, we've had many Starlink satellite reports coming in. You get drone reports, you get sky lanterns, you've got re-entry of space debris on a rare occasion, you get fireball meteors, weather phenomena. There's a lot of things that look very, very strange, and you can explain it. Even with Bigfoot, there have been misidentifications over the years of big shaggy dogs, of bear. We have a lot of bear in the area, of hunters and camouflage suits. So let's get that out of the way, because there are so many cases that while we can explain them, there are numerous incidents every year that you cannot easily explain away. And these are the cases that are really important. Over the years, I've investigated numerous very close range, low-level sightings of large structured objects that many people are not even aware of. And also, in more recent years, what's really, really intriguing we can talk about is what I call mini UFOs. I've been aware of them since the 1960s. You hear more about them on some of the TV shows now. They're talking about orbs of light, balls of light below the ground. And these cases are really, really intriguing. I can tell you in 2022 here in Pennsylvania, we had the biggest surge of these cases ever from all over the state. And these are amazing reports because these objects, most of them are about the size of a golf ball to a baseball to about a foot or two in diameter. They're generally spherical, but not always. Most of the time they are round. They're generally bright light sources of various colors. Some look more transparent. I've had reports of some people seeing some kind of a mass move around the side of some of them. But I've had other reports over the years, these things very close to people, they look solid and metallic as well. But most of the time they're luminous sources. But what's so intriguing the last few years is some of these cases are amazing. These things, even in daylight and beautiful afternoons, are coming up and gliding up within a few feet of people. I've had incidents over the years where they followed vehicles. I've had them enter people's cars and homes through open windows and go out right through the body of the vehicle or right through the walls of the house. I've had them tap on people's living room windows. It's just amazing, these cases. And this is something you rarely ever hear about. And I think these are very important cases because they're in good weather. They're at close range, at very, very low level, and I can give you some examples. Some of the cases are just very incredibly well documented.
Sure, can you do that? That would be great.
Well, let's go back to 2022. Now, all these years are kind of fitting together now. And in 2022, I believe it was. Okay, so in October of that year, up in Fayette County, you'll probably hear me mention Fayette County a lot, especially one area is known as the Chestnut Ridge, is a very active area year after year, especially certain areas along the ridge. The mountain range we're talking about is a little less than 100 miles in length. It here in southwest Pennsylvania, it runs through Westmoreland, Fayette, and Indiana County. And then it extends outside into West Virginia, outside of Morgantown for a few miles. And for years there have been incidents of everything, balls of light, UFOs, paranormal phenomena, UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings. But there are certain geographical locations along the ridge where there's been a lot of history of sightings where whatever we're dealing with, this phenomena seems to target or focus on. And this, again, has been going on for a long, long time. And there's cases of these things repeatedly being seen. There's one very, very active area now that you have some other research teams up there. I've been up to the site. It's an extremely, extremely remote, thickly wooded, mountainous area. It's very hard to access even with big vehicles. It's a very strange area. Even in recent weeks, I'm hearing reports of some of the researchers have had these little balls of light coming out of the woods. They've had cryptid sightings up there. There have been Bigfoot sightings around the general area. It's an amazing area for these type of things. And you find these areas now all across the country. You've heard about Skinwalker Ranch. Well, it's very similar. And what I was dealing with here actually in 1972 and 73 is Skinwalker type activity. 1973, we had the biggest outbreak, first of UFO sightings in history anywhere in the country. And back then, you got to remember, in 1973, well, we didn't have the cell phone telephones. We didn't have internet like today. Right. So the public didn't know what other people were reporting. Some of the local papers around here, some of the state papers, even national news, picked up a lot of these sighting reports. So there was many, many PA newspapers covering UFO reports. And many of these sightings were large structured objects low to the ground, hovering over highways. There were landing reports. I mean, it was just with all the UFO activity. My teams were out there day and night getting these reports. And we were really surprised because we were getting referrals from the news media and law enforcement across the state. And we were out there day and night investigating these incidents around our jobs. And many times we were on the scene within minutes, hours after they occurred. And that was amazing in itself, all these UFO reports. But then in the summer of 1973, you had the largest outbreak of Bigfoot sightings ever documented, though continued on into 1974. And many of those sightings were in daylight, many at quite close range, and sometimes more than one creature seen together. And quite often in some of these incidents, there will be some type of physical evidence, generally often footprints at the scene. And that's when some very strange things began to come to our attention. You know, I've been out in the field since the 60s investigating Bigfoot sightings in Pennsylvania. There have been a long history of sightings going back to the Native Americans here. There were newspaper accounts in the 1800s that talked about these large hair-covered creatures in the woods, but back then they called it the wild man of the forest or wild man of the woods. And so I was of the opinion that these things are some type of unknown creature, some type of unknown species that science was never able to confirm at that point. Well, as these incidents are unfolding in 73, a lot of strange things begin to come to our attention. And I can tell you, I had some very skeptical scientific people in my research teams. But a lot of these people spent months or years with me out in the field. And as they had time to investigate, to interview witnesses, to see the evidence, and began to see the patterns, you began to realize something very strange is going on here. We just don't understand it. And if you like, I can give you some examples of some of those cases, or if you have some questions.
I would love the examples. I'm just so fascinated by what you're saying.
Well, some of these are detailed reports, so they take a little bit of time. And I'll give you at least a brief summary of a couple of them. So one of the first things that caught our attention, So you got to remember now, these incidents are coming in all year round, including during the snow period, during the winter. So we get out to some of these incidents, and there'd be large footprints, unusual-looking tracks with very large strides between the tracks that would go for a distance, and they just abruptly stopped when there should have been more tracks. There was no way you could have fabricated those type of tracks, that condition, as we found it. And now all over the country, similar reports coming in from all over the country as well. But that was one of the first things that made us scratch our heads. And then as time went on, and again, we're not talking just one little local community. This went on for miles and miles, and in multitudes of different counties in the state. These reports are coming in. And so anyhow, then we began to see a pattern. We'd have a UFO sighting in a certain area. Within minutes, hours, or days later, we'd have a Bigfoot sighting, or vice versa. And some of the things we were hearing are like, what in the heck is going on? We would have people who had no way of knowing each other from miles and miles apart who didn't want to even tell us about it. They were so reluctant to talk about it. They would tell us in daylight they're seeing the 6, 7, 8 foot tall hair-covered creature in daylight standing maybe 40, 50 feet away from them that suddenly physically vanishes and reappears a short distance away. That's one of the things that was odd. Okay, and then it got much stranger. Then we began to get these amazing reports where UFOs and Bigfoot were seen together at the same time and place. And you may have heard this story. It's been written up all over the world. I'll just tell you the basics of it. Sure. We could spend hours on this one case. I read a whole book about all these incidents called Silent Invasion, which goes into great detail because we don't have time to even begin to talk about all these cases. But I remember this case very, very well. It was October 25th, 1973, when all these reports are coming in. It was about 10:30 at night, my local time, here in Pennsylvania. I got a call from a state police officer from the Uniontown State Police Barracks in Fayette County. He just came back from investigating this incident, and he sounded a little shaken. He said, I think there's something still possibly up on the farm. Can you get a team up here as soon as you can? Well, we're a distance away, but it's 10:30 at night. But yeah, we got our team together. We got our radio equipment, we got our radiation equipment, and found our way up to Fayette County. I believe we spent the whole night up there. And what we found out is that we had 15 witnesses in this rural country area that observed this huge object, this big barn-sized object, kind of red ball in the sky, about 100 feet off the ground, that was kind of hovering and slowly beginning to move down towards the ground. And all these people were standing outside watching this thing, and the farmer's son, so the son of the people that own the farm, he's coming out to visit. He sees this object, and the people out there watching this thing, he decides to go up to a neighbor's house to get a better view. And it looks like it's going to land on his dad's pasture. So there were 2 young boys in that house. The 3 of them decide they want to go up and see what this thing is. Before heading up to the pasture, they stop over his dad's farm. The senior guy in the group, the son, he grabs a .30-06 and a handful of ammunition. He didn't realize it at that time, but in that ammunition, he had 2 tracer bullets. So when you fire those tracer bullets, you just get like a luminous trail. So anyhow, as they're making their way down the farm road towards the pasture, the dogs around the area going crazy. They hear this high-pitched whining noise, and they hear this high-pitched baby crying sound. And they make their way up to the top of the pasture. They walk up to the pasture, and as they finally get up there, they're looking across the field, and they can't believe what they're seeing. So here's this huge object now on the ground or landed right above it. But it's not a complete sphere at this point. It's like a half a sphere. It's a bright, glowing, luminous dome. It's making this high-pitched whining noise, illuminating the whole area. And they're just standing there amazed because they can't believe what they're seeing. And they're there for a short time when their attention is drawn to a barbed wire fence about 75 feet away across the field. Along that barbed wire fence are these 2 huge hair-covered creatures, very typical Bigfoot description, walking slowly in their direction, kind of stooped slowly from one post of the barbed wire fence to the other. The one in front's about 8 feet tall. The one behind's a little smaller, it's around 7 feet tall. They're kind of stooped over to cover long, dark matted hair hanging off the body. They have no neck. They have luminous, green, glowing eyes. Their arms are so long they hang below the knees almost to the ground. And they're making that baby crying, whining noise. Well, the one young kid so frightened he ran out of the field. the other kids started yelling to the adults, shoot him, shoot him. So the guy takes his first shot. First of all, I don't recommend anybody shoot at these things. Unfortunately, many people did. And, well, as you'll hear, nobody ever brought one down. So anyhow, he took a shot over their head, and there was no response. But interestingly, when he fires that second shot, the largest of the two creatures reaches out as though to grab that tracer, makes a loud whining, crying noise, and that huge luminous object vanishes. It doesn't take off and lift up into the sky. It just disappears. And most of the luminosity is gone, and the sound stops, and it gets very quiet. The creatures turn around, start walking along the fence line back towards the woods. At that point, the guy's loaded his .30-06 with live ammo. He's firing into him. He's mainly aiming at the larger creature. And he told me, he said, till he passed away, he said, I'll never forget that huge thing staring at me with those glowing green eyes, with pumping live ammo into it, and there's no effect on him whatsoever. Well, at that point, they run back to their vehicle and go back to the farmhouse, told the family what happened, and they went to a neighbor's house and called the state police. So when the trooper arrives 45 minutes later, the witness said, look, you're going to think I'm crazy. Just forget about it. The trooper said, look, we had a report of something similar. We had reported two creatures up in the mountain the night before. I have to investigate it. So they go up to the state police car, up into the pasture. They're looking around for evidence. And the trooper told me at the area where the object was on the ground, it was about self-luminous and glowing, about 100 feet or more in diameter. He said, if I had a newspaper, I'm sure I could have sat down within it and read a newspaper from the light coming off the glow. He noticed the animals wouldn't go anywhere near it. He shined his flashlight beam into it, and he could barely see it as he was aiming his flashlight at it. But anyhow, I was told that they left the scene. They went back to the state police barracks. Both the trooper and the witness were taken to two separate rooms. They were separately interviewed, and then they called me to send my team up. And then things got much more bizarre during the night. And I'm just telling you, it's probably one of the strangest cases ever documented anywhere in the world. And that's when we began to realize that Bigfoot was much stranger than what we imagined. And in the weeks ahead, from widespread areas, miles and miles away, more and more of these very, very bizarre, strange reports coming in. So what I want to tell you is this. When I talk about these cases, I am not suggesting that Bigfoot is a passenger in a spaceship for another planet. Because we don't know for sure what these objects are. I said years ago, I think we're dealing with more than one origin to the unknown category. Maybe a small percentage might be extraterrestrial. But I'm telling you, and as I'll tell you in the next story, what we're dealing with here, as bizarre as it sounds, it's not just my findings now. People all over the country and around the world are reporting the same thing. Especially more recent years, you're hearing more about this. We're dealing with something that has a physical and a non-physical component to it. For lack of a better term, I'll call it interdimensional. We don't understand the science behind it. Under certain conditions, whatever we're dealing with, these things come into our physical reality. Sometimes they leave evidence. Sometimes there's electromagnetic effects involved. And they appear and they disappear. And it's so bizarre, nobody understands it. And I think that's what's happening.
Do you think, for where these Sasquatch creatures are concerned, like you say, we don't know definitively whether or not they're coming from these ships. But do you think, I always had kind of like a theory myself that, these aliens supposedly have been doing tests on us, trying to create these hybrids. And what if Sasquatch was one of those tests?
Well, again, there are many theories. We can speculate all we want. We just don't know. So let me tell you about this other account. This is the case, among others, but this one is the case that convinced me that what we're dealing with, again, is not an unknown species of animal. It's something much stranger, which is why there apparently is no bodies of these things so far. So anyhow, this is February 6, 1974. This is way in the mountains of Fayette County, way up in the mountains. Anyhow, you may remember this. I'm sure a lot of your listeners remember the time period. There was a big national trucker strike going on across the country. There was gas rationing. Everybody remembers the gas rationing across the country. There was some violence in different parts of the country. So here in Pennsylvania, the state police and the National Guard were patrolling together. You had members of both units that responded to this case. I could not get up to the scene till early next morning because I couldn't get gas where I lived. It wasn't available that night. Anyhow, so what happened is this woman sitting in her cabin home deep in the mountains. It's a normal evening. She's sitting there watching television. When she hears on her little front porch, she had some empty soda cans, pop cans out there, and somebody was knocking the pop cans around. She could hear like the metal sound hitting. And she figured, well, a few weeks before, there was a pack of wild dogs came through, and she thought, I bet the dogs are back, so what I'll do, she thought, I'll grab my 16-gauge double-barrel shotgun, and I'll load one chamber, and I'll shoot over their head and scare the dogs away. So she proceeds to do that. She loads her shotgun. She walks up towards the front door. She turns on the switch for the outside porch light. She steps out, but there's no dogs. 6 feet away is this huge 7-foot-tall, hair-covered Bigfoot. As soon as she turned the light on, and put his arm straight up over his head. And how does she respond? She pulls the trigger and fires right into it.
Wow.
She said there's a brilliant flash of light, like a flash on a camera, and that huge hairy creature vanished right in front of her. But her in-laws lived 100 feet away, and they heard the gunshot, and they called her, so what are you shooting at? She tried to tell him. So her son-in-law grabs his pistol, a sidearm. He starts walking down that dark road, and at some point, he reportedly encountered 4 or 5 hairy people with eyes like coals of fire and started shooting at them. And it was somewhere around the same time that they observed a large, luminous, glowing object hovering over the trees at the same time. That's when they became quite shaken. They called the state police for help. And so anyhow, like I said, I couldn't get up to the scene. My team the next morning, we couldn't get gas. We got up the next morning, everything's back to normal. I got a hold of the primary police investigator, and he said when they got on scene, he said it took them a long time to find the place way up the mountains. When they got there, everything was over. But he said the witnesses were very credible. They were physically very emotional, very shaking, gave great detailed reports of what they saw. But he said what convinced him was the way the animals reacted when they got on the scene. So these people had a number of big dogs. They had several other type of farm animals. He said when he got on the scene, dogs would not make a sound. They wouldn't bark. He said they would move, and I can tell you that is something I have seen many times. Even the most vicious dogs, when they're generally close to these creatures, they shake, they cower. Sometimes they'll lie down and their eyes will move around. They won't make a sound. Often their diet changes. They won't eat right for 2 or 3 days later. This has happened the last couple of years in our area. Other cases we had where these things were very close to people in daylight. And but that's been going on for years and years. That was the case that convinced me that we're dealing with something that has both a physical and a non-physical component to it. And I have found a lot of interesting little correlations between cryptids, Bigfoot, the UFOs, and a lot of these similar type of incidents that are going on. A certain type of details are very similar. For example, we have many reports in daylight of large, solid objects hovering and slowly just fading away and vanishing, or in some cases, physically changing from one form into another. And then you've got the Bigfoot reports. A lot of people don't hear about. You hear about all these reports that these things, running across the field and they look solid. But there are many reports from witnesses where these things suddenly appear in the middle of the road in front of them out of nowhere. They see them from head to toe. They move for distance and then they're gone. And in some cases, people said the body looks more like misty or foggy. In other instances, you have incidents where these things are partially solid looking, but other parts of the body are kind of out of focus, or you can see through them. And then you have those reports of the tracks that under all kind of conditions just abruptly stop when there should have been more tracks. So these are just a partial details of what we've been uncovering. And I'm telling you, it is so strange and so bizarre. And then the other thing is we talked about those small spheres of light. For years, there's been a history in Pennsylvania, and now all over the country, we're hearing the same thing for Bigfoot research and witnesses. In areas where you have a lot of history of Bigfoot sightings, you get reports of these unusual light phenomena or these small spheres of light coming down low out of the woods and sometimes approaching within feet of the witnesses.
I was just thinking of an incident that I had, and I can't explain it, but we had this house up in Northern California that was in a fairly rural area, and we were going up late at night to get there. And speaking of orbs of light and these kinds of lights, I saw this light come out of one of the bedroom windows, and it shot right through the car in front of us. Literally came through the cab of the car. And to this day, I still don't know what it was. It was golden in color. I have no clue what it was. When I looked to see it after it left the car, it was gone.
Yeah, and what time of day was that?
Around maybe 1 or 2 in the morning.
Okay, so what were the weather conditions like?
It was cold because it was around Christmas time.
Okay, all right. Well, what's really intriguing is, the first thing we look at is weather data. Ball lightning is something you always think about.
Right.
But you've got to have the right conditions. It's such a rare type of occurrence.
Right.
And none of these cases we're talking about seem to fit in with what we know about ball lightning. So here, I'll just give you an example. Again, there's so many. But last year, 2023, was another significant year. Now, it wasn't the huge numbers of strange cases like we had in 73, but so many of the reports last year were daylight, close range, low-level Bigfoot sightings, the balls of light, UFOs, cryptids, weird stuff. To just give you an example, here's one. February of 23, early morning, 1:30 in the morning, this lady wakes up and happens to look out the window. She sees this solid, bright, white ball of light about the size of a basketball moving steadily about 8 feet from the window and about 7, 8 feet above the ground. It's moving between the side of her house and the front porch. It moves steadily past the window. It continues to move past the yard and the driveway and begins to rise higher to the sky over the roof of her neighbor's house and moves away in the distance and is gone in about a minute and there's no sound. That's just an example.
Wow. And what about footprints? Because you mentioned footprints, going off to a distance and disappearing. What types of prints have you seen when you guys were going out there?
Well, I can tell you during that massive wave in 1973, a lot of what was initially showing up were very strange 3-toed footprints. However, we also had your typical 5-toed tracks. And this is another area where it gets stranger and stranger. And a lot of people don't know this, but all around the country, California, Pacific Northwest, for years, they have seen not only your typical 5-toed tracks, but sometimes 3-toed and 4-toed tracks as well. And I can tell you here in Pennsylvania, I have a whole lecture I do on this, and I show the pictures of some of the casts we've made or others have made. We have a whole menagerie of a whole bunch of other very bizarre tracks. The witnesses were all credible. There was no indication they were fabricated. A lot of these places, people wouldn't even have found the track if it was a hoax because they would never be able to look around those areas. And the whole point is this. I deal with all kinds of strange creatures. My latest book is called Creepy Cryptids and Strange UFO Encounters in Pennsylvania. There are so many bizarre, weird things in there that are well documented. I mean, from, some of these cases over here has been from tall, winged humanoid creatures to floating creatures to out-of-place animals like black panthers, which is another interesting story, and the thunderbirds. And interestingly, we've had 3 really detailed thunderbird sightings in the last few months in 2024. And a couple of them have been within the last month, 2 of them in daylight. So we're talking about these thunderbirds. They're these huge flying creatures that have been reported all over the country. It goes back to the Native Americans. And we're talking a wingspan of 10 to over 20 foot in width. And it's very difficult, just like with UFO sightings, it's very difficult to judge altitude and size. But we have incidents with these huge flying creatures, again, that are extremely low level off the ground, or in some instances, they were actually on the roadway eating roadkill and had their wings out and were flapping their wings. And there was one case I looked into years ago in neighboring West Virginia. And this is early morning. The guy had to hit his brakes because the thing was blocking the road. It was taller than his vehicle. He could see the end of the wings as it's flapping, trying to get off the ground. It's knocking all the dust and dirt up. After it got out of there, the next day he went back and measured the width. It was 21 feet across.
Wow. That is huge.
The whole point is this. There's no way scientifically you can have all these unknown species of creatures. And it's not just Pennsylvania, it's all over the country and other parts of the world in some cases. But you've got so many credible people. And why would educators and engineers and police officers and first responders and hunters report these things? Not on wanting publicity. They have nothing to gain. Most of them never would have believed these things would exist until they had their own personal encounter. What did they have to gain? Nothing. The point is this. We've got to be dealing with something we don't understand. And I firmly believe Again, we're dealing with something that comes in and out of our physical reality or from another dimension. We don't know what we're dealing with. Under certain conditions, these things come into our reality. They leave evidence of time. They come and they go. They're here and they're gone. And that's the only thing that makes any sense anymore. And it's just it's so beyond what we understand right now. I think that's why there's so much secrecy about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, when you talk about these winged things like Mothman and stuff, how frequent are sightings and stuff like that?
Okay, again, you're faded out on me a little. Did you say how often people see these like thunderbird creatures?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know, we hear these reports. We don't get a lot of them. It's surprising that we've had 3 very good daylight, low-level reports since early this year. And they're not in one area. They're all different parts of the state by different people who have no way of knowing about these other reports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one person I interviewed several weeks ago, I mean, I checked this person's background. I can't say what her position is, but it's a high-level, important position. And she was shocked. I mean, she's at an intersection, eastern Pennsylvania, and she looks up, and this thing is very, very close to her, but extremely low. And she said this thing took up both sides of the highway. The wingspan easily had a 20-foot wingspan, and she thought, my gosh, if there's a young child around there, that thing is so big, it'd pick the child up. That was her thought. And then you get this other report just a couple weeks ago down in southwest Pennsylvania, almost identical report. This thing flew down right over top of the guy's car in daylight, very close. He said this thing easily had a 17-foot wingspan estimated. So, I mean, why would people make these stories up?
Right. And the other question I have is, for people that don't know what Pennsylvania is like, because a lot of us, when we think of Pennsylvania, we think of Pittsburgh, big cities. But there are a lot of rural areas out there as well, right?
Oh, Pennsylvania is just covered with forests and woodland, and that's for sure. But what's intriguing, we're getting more and more reports over the years of UFO sightings over populated areas in big cities, as we had in recent weeks. We've had 3 daylight sightings at low level of large objects over populated areas, all similar reports. So these are similar to what the government's calling Tic Tacs, or they're cylindrical, windless objects. I've had reports of them for years and years. I had one witness said they looked to them like a good and plenty candy. I thought that was a good description. But they generally look solid and metallic. But in many instances in the last few years, these things in daylight, they're hovering in a beautiful afternoon and suddenly just vanish and they're gone. They don't accelerate and leave, they just vanish. Or in some cases, they're moving extremely slow across the sky. That's something else being reported as well. But there have been more and more reports of not only UFO sightings, but the Bigfoot sightings and cryptid reports in more populated areas where there's not a lot of woods. So what we're talking about, it doesn't require woods. We're just always thinking, well, you only see Bigfoot in the wooded areas. But that's not the case anymore. And that's what I'm telling you. There's more of this than we understand.
Why do you think Pennsylvania is such a hot spot for all this stuff?
Well, I don't think it's just Pennsylvania, but you also got to remember, I mean, historically, there's always been strange things in Pennsylvania, going back to the Native Americans across the straits. There's all kind of legends of things being seen from in the sky to Bigfoot sightings, and there's a lot of things that they've had a history of. But you also got to remember, this is one of the only places in the country where I had a research group who investigated the reports. I had an active hotline since 1969. It's one of the only places where people can report something. And that's something you don't find a lot of places. So it may well be we have a better source for information here than others. But I'm in touch with many other researchers around the country, and they're all getting similar kind of reports as well, many of these people.
Absolutely. I just find all this interesting because have you noticed an increase, as far as like the reports from years ago, are you starting to notice an increase in reports, where it seems like things are heating up a little more?
I can tell you since, let's see how my memory is doing now. I have so many reports from the fall and winter of 2021. And a lot of this is on my website. So our listeners can go to my website. There's a lot of really detailed reports on here. A lot of what we're talking about is a lot more detail. There's some photographs of some of the objects that have been taken on the website as well. But since the fall and winter of 2021, it's been basically all year round unending reports coming in right through the last week.
Wow.
And generally in the fall and winter, historically, things quiet down with snow and cold weather. But actually in the fall and winter 2021, we had an increase in close-range, low-level UFO incidents. And then it just continued into the next year and into the next year with Bigfoot sightings, UFO sightings. There were numerous Bigfoot sightings across the state, especially up here in the Chestnut Ridge last year, where witnesses were 40, 50, 60 feet away from Bigfoot in daylight. Very, very close reports. Remember one report from a couple years ago up on the ridge between Indiana and Westmoreland County. I've been up to the farm several times with some other researchers. Very credible family. They've been seeing both big ones, 8, 9 foot tall creatures up there. There have been smaller ones being seen, and other people all around the area that they don't even know are also reporting these incidents. But the woman that one morning was walking around her property. She's standing out there, and suddenly this 9 foot tall, huge, kind of gray-haired Bigfoot comes walking up out of the woods, carrying a deer over his right shoulder. It stopped when it saw her. They had eye contact and made a loud grunt, and turned and ran through the field into the woods and gone.
Wow. Do you think, if these are wild animals, could it be happening more and more because we're encroaching on their territory? Or do you think, like you say, you have suspicions that it's all linked to these UFO sightings?
Okay, you fade out on me again. What part was about the UFO sighting in the end? I couldn't get cut out on me.
Okay, do you think, because I know there's a lot of wildlife encroachment, even in rural areas where more people are moving out there. So maybe that's why, there's more of these sightings coming up? Or do you think, like you said, you have a theory that they could be linked to all these UFO sightings?
Well, once again, I am not suggesting these things are flying around in spacecraft. That's not what it is.
Right.
I think it's a part of the same phenomena. Here's a pattern I found years ago. Many close-range, low-level UFO sightings, and many encounters with Bigfoot and other cryptids. When we talk about cryptid, Bigfoot's considered a cryptid. It's a creature which people report, but which science has never confirmed. So you've got all kind of strange creature reports and cryptid reports coming in. And again, you at times may have some physical evidence, but it's not a lot. These things, they come and they go. And from the reports we have, I'm telling you, it's all energy connected. I just started to tell you, many close-range, low-level UFO sightings and many encounters with Bigfoot and other cryptids occur in the vicinity of high-energy sources. So you have a lot of incidents around high-tension power lines, power plants, bodies of water, railroad tracks, radio and cell phone towers, I think it's bodies of water, gas wells, gas lines, etc. You definitely have an energy connection to a lot of these cases.
And what happens with the people that are the witnesses? I mean, do they stay freaked out by these things, or are they pretty used to hearing about them, so when they do see them, it doesn't bother them as much? Or what happens to them?
Well, I can tell you, so many of the witnesses I interview and people would report to me are people who never had any experiences before. They had never seen anything. I'm telling you, some of these people from 20, 30 years ago, today I'm still in touch with. Many of these people, their lives were changed by what they experienced. I mean, I've talked, before the pandemic, I interviewed some hunters, spent years in the woods. I sat there face to face with a couple of these guys. They had tears coming out of their eyes. They told me they would never have ever believed these stories they used to hear. They used to laugh at people until they had their own encounter with these creatures. And they said, unfortunately, they loved the woods. They would never go back in the woods again. Everybody's personality is different. People react differently. Some people, once they see it, they want to go out in the woods and try and get proof of it to prove to other people that's what they saw. That's happened to some people too. But in a lot of cases, these people are reluctant to go back out in the woods. Even though I can tell you, the hundreds of Bigfoot sightings I've investigated, these creatures seem curious of human activity. They will at times throw fairly good-sized boulders or branches towards people. But for them to go after somebody and physically harm them, that's not the kind of reports we're getting here.
Okay. And what's your advice for someone that may have seen something like that?
Well, I deal mainly in Pennsylvania. People call me from all over the country. If they see something, especially anything recently here in Pennsylvania, they go to my website, which is stangordon.info, stangordon.info. My email and phone number's on there. They can reach me directly. I don't use any names. I'm interested in the data to compare to the other reports. So, try to get pictures if you can. any kind of documentation, write all the information down, and if you can get a hold of me, it's fine. If you have some other reputable research groups around your area, let them look into it, because I do mainly in Pennsylvania. We can't get out and do everything. It's impossible. There's so many reports coming in. But, we need to document these things so we can compare the data.
Well, that's the next question I have is, most everybody carries a cell phone. And I know, that there's a lot of rural areas out in Pennsylvania and stuff. But why do you think, that there hasn't been a really clear photo of one of these Bigfoot?
Well, that's an interesting question. Glad you brought it up. One, I can tell you, over the years, yes, I get photographs of UFOs and the balls of light and possibly some Bigfoot stuff over the years. I've gotten game cam pictures in, security camera pictures, cell phone pictures in. But unfortunately, a lot of these events happen at night. A lot of the cameras are not designed to focus and take pictures at night, especially something in the sky. But yes, we do have some pretty good pictures, some daylight pictures of some of these objects, some of which are on my website you can look at. I've seen some photographs have been taken where people were very credible and talking about this creature near their property. One I remember is a pretty good clip, and you can see long hair hanging off the side of a body, but the camera was not able to focus and get the entire body, so we can't say 100% for sure what it was. But here's another really intriguing aspect, and I've found this more and more, and I get into this in my latest book with some of the patterns I found, that one, especially in the last year, 2 years, a lot of low-level sightings and big black solid triangle objects at low level, the big cigar-shaped things, and the balls of light below the ground, people have attempted to take pictures of these objects with their phones, and sometimes moments later, their fully charged battery will completely drain of power.
Whoa.
Or the cameras, in some cases, there's a lot of distortion in them when they play it back. I've had incidents the last couple of years also where people have their video on their camera. They can see it on the camera itself, but when they play it back, there was no video recording. Sometimes they're lucky to get a still frame. So a lot of these EM effects, electromagnetic effects, odd malfunction, been showing up for years and years. And I've also had somebody show up with some of the cryptid cases as well. But on occasion, we do get some pictures.
Absolutely. Stan, what's next for you?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What's next for you?
So what's next? You're saying now, you're saying what's next for me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm busy all the time. I'm booked all year for speaking events. We have a lot of things, a lot of great events coming up here in Pennsylvania. We have the Kecksburg UFO Festival, July 19th to 21st. And then we have the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure up in Fayette County. I believe it's September 6th and 7th. You go on my website, look at upcoming events. There's a lot of events coming up here in Pennsylvania. I'm constantly working on new cases. I'm taking calls from people. So it's just busy all the time. I never know what the next phone call is going to be.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's always neat to have you on. These stories are terrific,
Well, I appreciate. Well, we didn't get started. There's so much to talk about. There's always something new. What you see on my website, stangordon.info, is just a sample of the many reports that come in, and it's very interesting. All my books, by the way, are available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, and they've got a lot of amazing first-hand cases that have been investigated. Most people never heard about.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to get you back on again to talk about other stuff.
Okay, well, sounds good. Appreciate you having me on. All
right, Stan, you have a great rest of your evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Give me a second, you guys. Turn that mic down. Give me a second, you guys, to turn the phone off. It's the only drawback with doing it this way. Oh, it's off. It's the only drawback with doing this way, with this box. That's why. Whoa! It just went. Everything just went. That's how life is. The only drawback. The only drawback with doing stuff this way is that. Let me get this off. There I am. Okay. Okay, see, that's what I mean. I got multiple things going on right now. The only drawback with doing this way with this technique is that I've got a box over here that I'm dealing with, along with a mic that I'm dealing with, and this other thing that I have tilts over. So if I don't have it just right, it's going to tilt, which is what it did. Everything went flying. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It's always fun to have Stan on. I'll give you some contact information for him, and I'll give you some names of some of his books. And hopefully the audio was clear enough for everybody to hear him. In the past we started to have a little bit of trouble with that, but that's what I'm working on all the time to make sure that we don't have those issues anymore. Tomorrow, Nancy Mass will be with us, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking about how our imagination can help or hinder us when seeing ghosts. So that should be a very interesting conversation with Nancy. But I want to thank everybody that stuck with us tonight, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And don't forget, check out the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team Meetup to check out those events, the Psychic Development class that's on Sunday, and the Ghost Hunting 101 class that's on Saturday. So I'll see you guys, and here's Stan's information, and away we go. Website is stangordon.info, all lowercase. Okay, Astonishing Encounters is one of the books. He's got a lot of books out, so you're going to have to check his website out and then head over to Amazon to check these books out. You've got Really Mysterious Pennsylvania. You got Silent Invasion. And Creepy Cryptids. And of course, there's quite a few more books out as well. Amazon or his website. Okay, I will see you guys tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Hope you have a great rest of your evening. Sorry for the banging in the end there when everything went down at once. It's just Murphy's Law going into motion when we're practicing with new equipment. And again, I'm going to put a video on about how to set up a studio. So I think for anybody that's interested in that. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great evening, everybody, and behave yourselves. Bye.